Yo, GLT Nifty fam, it's your boy Wisp here. I am half a flask deep into a bottle of red wine, and it is almost 1 a.m. here on the east coast of Australia. I'm just a Kiwi boy doing strange things, making weapons to bring into the Niftyverse, and I'd like to show you how I do that. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to basically throw down the quickest tutorial that I can possibly give you on how I make things, make swords in this example, to bring into Nifty Island and use to slice your enemies in half. So what you have here, there are 3 swords. One is the nifty this is the nifty sword example, and it is the base sword that you get. It's quite a nicely sized sword for the base avatar, the default avatar that you get, Topo, who is a bit of a legend in the Niftyverse, right? And so this sword is a really good size, and it's a really good format to build your things off. To get this sword, all you need to do is navigate to let me just go back here. Navigate to docs.niftyisland.com/creator. From the creator docs, you can go into model guidelines, model types, weapons, and down the bottom here you can download the pistol and the sword example. And I recommend checking out all of these model guidelines. If you're going to create Nifty, you should go and read everything here, okay? But we're going to focus on this sword example. So I've already downloaded that. I've come into Blender. I have imported an FBX, which is the file that I downloaded because that's how it comes. And I have imported this sword into my, I'm going to click that, but I've already got it in there, into my workspace. And that's going to give me a really good example of what size I need to make my things at. And you can see that this sword is 1.4 meters on the Z axis. So that's how long, or tall, if you want to say that, that's how tall it is. That's how long it is. Compared to Topo, if you take it in game, you'll see it. Right? So we have that sword. I'm going to move that to the left. On the right here, we have another sword. This sword was, I made this using AI prompts. I used Meshi to be specific, but I didn't just stop there. I brought it into Blender. I manipulated it in a lot of different ways. I changed the handle, I colored it, I painted it using texture painting. I manipulated the mesh and gave it these nice curves. I gave it some symmetry, and that's why it doesn't look like your typical AI sword. I also baked lights onto it so that in game it looks a lot more glowy. You can see this nifty general sword doesn't really glow much except for these, whereas this one is very glowy. Right? So that's another example of a sword. We're going to get rid of that. We don't need to see that. This sword is the one, this is a bit of a shill moment. This is one that I've been working on for the last 2 days. It's called the Bloom Blade, and it's gonna drop soon. And let's just say that it is powerful as fuck. Its textures are made up from a bunch of textures. Now, before I go too deep into this, I guess I should explain a little bit about what's going on. So, just down here, let me just bring up. Just down here is this box. It's going to stay here. This is going to tell you the buttons that I'm clicking. See how it's changing? Alright, so those are my keystrokes. Anytime you feel lost, pause the video and just double check. See what I'm doing, okay? So this, I'm not going to go slow, by the way, just to accommodate for that. I'm going to do this as fast as I possibly can. So, this sword here is made up of a bunch of objects. Each object has a different material. Each material is applied in a certain way. So I'm going to do less than that, but let's just say that this main blade is actually using the material, the texture that these blooms have, right? Whereas these I don't even know what you call that. I'm going to call it part of the hilt though, because this entire thing is the hilt, right? This has a completely different texture, and this is a leather texture that I added, and then down here is actually it's an image texture, and this image texture I also used AI to create, but then I took it through GIMP, which is an open source program to create a PNG that I could use in programs such as this. So that's an example of what we can create, but let's get rid of that. Now let's pull this here. We're going to have a little go at creating a sword as quick as possible without going into too much detail. So Shift A, we're going to add a cube. You can just type it in, right? We are going to press S to scale. We're going to bring it right down. Let's bring it. We're making the blade on this, so let's bring this to the mid section here, and we're going to scale it. Press Z to scale along the Z axis, and make it about the same size as the blade portion of this default blade. Let's scale it again along the X axis. See this red axis? And that might have been too far, so let's just make it a bit bigger. I like to not go too far when you're scaling, because you can always do it later, right? Now I'm pressing the numpad is a really helpful thing. See how I get all these different views when I press random things? I like 1, gives you the side view. 3 on the numpad gives you the front view. 7 on the numpad gives you the top view. 3 is really good for us right now, so let's just stay in 3, right? Now we're in object mode. Object mode helps you select the entire thing, right? But object mode doesn't allow you to make changes inside of the object. So let's click the object that we're working with, this new cube that we created, and press tab to enter into edit mode. And that's showed up here. See how when I press tab it changes between object and edit? You see that? So we're going to go to edit mode. We're going to press Control R to make a loop cut, and we're going to make, I'd say, about, I don't know, 5 loop cuts, and then we're going to press escape to make sure that they're in the middle, and then we're just going to click away from there so nothing has changed, right? Now we're going to make some more loop cuts. First we're going to make one down the middle because we want a little bit of middle symmetry. So Control R for the loop cut. Let's cut it directly down the middle. Press escape so that it's right there in the middle. Right. Now we've got a good starting point, right? So I'm going to press 3 on the numpad to give me that front view. Z to give me all these different, so you can go to solid, you can go to material preview, which gives you the preview of all the materials you have. You've got rendered, which gives you the lighting, which is why only this is showing up, and then you've got wireframe, and wireframe is extremely helpful for things like this because you can see right through. Okay, now in edit mode you have these three different options here. You can access them using 1, 2, and 3. So 1 is vertex or vertex. You can select vertices with 1, right? If I press 2, it'll take you to that mode. You can select edges with this. See, now I'm moving the edge. So if I press 1, I grab that, I'm moving the vertex. If I press 2, I grab that, I'm moving the edge. If I press 3, I can grab this, which is the entire face, and now I'm moving the face. Okay, so for this purpose right here, and it's going to do you really well to start getting really used to knowing where you are on the X and the Y and the Z, which is the up and down axis, because you're going to be using them a lot. Alright, so 3, orthographic view 3. I'm going to go to this vertex, I'm going to select vertices, and I'm going to grab the top ones, press S for scale, and Y along the y-axis, and you can always see the axes here, so we know we're going sideways, right? We're making the tip of the blade. We're going to select these ones. We're going to go S, Y for the y-axis, and we're going to bring it in a bit. And we're going to keep doing that, right? Let's grab all these ones, right? Let's get this one in a little bit more. Let's use G for grab on the z-axis and move it up a little bit. S on the y-axis, bring it in a little bit. G on the z-axis, we want this a little bit more sharp. So S, scale on the y-axis, bring it in a bit. Grab these, scale on the y-axis, right? Grab this. Let's put these a little bit higher, just because they're going to help us later. Right, so remember I said we're not going to go too deep into this, okay? So that's pretty good for the start of a blade. Now let's have a look at it in solid view, okay? You can see it's very flat. We want that edge, right? So we're going to go back. We're going to go back to wireframe. Remember, check this down here. You can see what I'm doing. Z, we're going to go wireframe, and we are going to go tab to enter edit mode. We're going to go shift R, control R. Oops, I've messed things up. Tab to go into edit mode. Control R for loop cut. We're going to click right there to give it that edge. And now we're going to scale that, right? But I think we should just scale it on the Y. Let's make it wider before we go tall. And then we're going to scale it on the Z to make it a bit taller. And then we're going to grab it on the Z and bring it up a bit. And now we're starting to get, if we go back to solid view, now we're starting to get a little bit of a blade. And remember, this is all just really quick. Okay, so I'm going to scale that on the Y. And I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so let's move to the next part. Let's make a hilt. Okay, so we have this object here. Now a good practice is to name these objects. So we're going to call this one blade. Double click, call it blade. Alright, that's your blade. Now shift A for an object. We're going to make a cube. We're going to scale it right down. And we could probably get this a little bit out of the way now. We're going to keep scaling this down. Alright, we're going to grab it with G, Z for the Z axis. We're going to press S to scale it, press X to scale it along the X axis, bring it closer to that sword. We're going to press S to scale it, we're going to press Z to scale it on the Z axis, we're going to press G to grab it, Z to grab it and pull it up. Okay, now we've got a little bit of a base here, right? Now let's implement some tools. Let's use some modifiers, okay? So I'm going to press tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to press 3, remember? 1, 1, 2, 3. See that? 3 to grab the face. Now we're going to press, this is a new button, we're going to go E for extrude. Right, so we just took that whole face and brought it up. S to scale, G to grab it up, S to scale a little bit more, grab, let's just play around. Now we're going to extrude it again, so use E to extrude, grab to put it up, grab Z, and then S, bring it down, and let's just stop there. So that's pretty cool. I like that. So let's add a modifier. Now over here, as long as you're in object mode, we're going to call this one sword hilt. So we know which one it is. So we got sword, and that's the nifty sword. In fact, let's just get that right out of the way. Let's call this nifty sword. There we go. So sword hilt, and we're going to click on this one down here, this blue wrench. Add modifier, generate mirror. Okay, and when we do this, you're mirroring along a specific axis, right? And we want to mirror from the Y. See this green bit here, the green line? Y to Y. So X and X doesn't help us. Y to Y though. Now, there we go. So Y-axis, we've mirrored along the Y-axis, okay? I still think it's a bit wide, so let's click it, press S to scale along the X, and we just reduce it just a little bit. There we go. Okay, cool. That's pretty good. And we can go ahead and apply this modifier. We didn't have to do that, but we may as well, because we're going to try and move really quickly through this. Okay, so now we need to make a handle, right? So shift, so making sure we're in object mode, tab to object, remember, tab to object mode, shift A, we're going to type in sil for cylinder, and look at this massive cylinder. Now this is a low poly game, so let's put this down to something like 12. Okay, and then we're going to scale it right down using S to scale. Remember that always, S to scale. Let's keep scaling it right down. Okay, let's scale it a little bit along this X axis. So we S along the X axis, right? And then we need to make it longer, so S along the Z axis, and then G for grab along the Z axis, and we bring it down a little bit, right? Let's make it a little bit, well, actually that's kind of nice, okay? So we have that selected, press tab to enter edit mode, control R, that same one we used before, and using the scroll button, the scroll wheel, you can choose the amount of loop cuts that you're making. So let's make 4 loop cuts, right? Now, if I press 3, it's going to give me that perfect front view. And then Z to enter the type of shading. We're going to go to wireframe so we can see right through it. We're going to make sure we're in edit mode. We're also going to make sure we have vertices or edges selected, but I like using vertices. And we're going to select like that. And we're going to press S to scale along the Y. And the only reason I'm using Y is because I'm kind of going for a sideways vibe. So we select SY, SY, and look, there's lots of ways, oops, there's lots of ways that you can do this. Why is that not working? Grab it, SY. There's lots of ways that you can do this, and I don't want to go into everything, okay? In fact, I don't know everything, so that's the true fact of the matter. Cool. We've got a good start to a handle there. So let's go to solid. That's kind of nice. Now let's call this cylinder that we just brought into the play. Handle. And let's make a pommel. So in object mode, using tab to switch between edit and object, we go shift A. We're going to write sphere. And I like to choose UV sphere. Look at how big that is. Let's reduce the polygons by half, so we go from 32 to 16. And maybe rings down to 8 as well. That's pretty good. And then let's scale the heck out of it. Let's press 3 to look at the orthographic view straight on. Scale, scale, scale. G for grab, Z for down, or on the Z axis. And we're pretty close there, but I want it to be facing me. So let's use the rotate function. Let's press R for rotate, and we're going to rotate it on the Y axis, and we're going to type in the amount, so 90 degrees, and now look at that, it's facing directly towards me. And so let's scale this a little bit, grab it a little bit with the G on the Z axis, pull it up, and I think it needs to be thinner. So let's go scale on the X, and oops, and there we have it. It's a pretty good, well, again, I'm not going for perfection right now, I'm just going for example, right? Let's just make it a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now, one of the things you need to do when you're doing all this kind of stuff is applying transforms, right? So all of these changes you just made, you need to make sure that it knows what it's doing. So first of all, I'm going to change the name of this. We're going to call that the pommel, right? And then we're going to go in object mode. We're going to select all. We're going to go Control A for apply, and we're going to go all transforms. Now every object knows where it's at. Okay, let's start texturing this, and there's a couple of tools I'm gonna shout out to you. Just before I do, I want to check my time because I'm trying to be as quick as possible. Okay, 20 minutes. Let's try to do this in half an hour. All right. So, two tools I'm going to recommend. One is this tool here, and it is called the Blender Kit, and you can download Blender Kit online for free. Okay, I love working with open source software, so let's go for free stuff. Blender Kit is this little search box here, and you can basically type in things like, let's go for steel, right? Oh, let's go click on materials. We're going to click steel. Let's just choose this one. Bam, drop it, drag and drop it straight onto this thing. And now we're in solid view, so I'm going to press Z. See how we're in solid? We're going to go material preview. Look at that. There's a material there now. We've got some silver blade. I don't like that one. Let's go for this one. It's a bit nicer. Cool. Alright. Now, let's start to mess around with this. Now, I think the blade can be like silvery. Let's make this a little bit more like iron. So let's just drop this iron on here. Good enough for me. And now you can use this. Now that we've already dragged and dropped that here, we can come over here. See how it's created this new material here? And so let's make the pommel the same thing. So if I click on the pommel, see how there's nothing there. If I go like this, pop here, and then choose rough iron steel, boom, there we go. Now of course you're not going to be wanting to hold iron in your hands, so let's make this leather. Let's just choose anything that looks semi awesome. That took quite a bit. That was like 50 megabytes or something. Okay, so why is it looking like that? I don't know. So this is just a little bit of a test. You can go through many different. Let's grab this one. I like this one. I've used this one before. Okay, that looks good, but it looks like it's a bit stretched. So let's get out of this. We're going to use these three textures. We're going to bake them to this object using an add-on called Simple Bake. I highly recommend that if you are getting into Blender, you should use something like this. It's probably up there with the most helpful tool that I have used. Now, just 1 second, I'm going to have a sip of wine. Okay, so I don't like how this is on the handle. So I'm going to go to UV editing, and I'm going to click here, make sure I'm in edit mode using tab, and look at see how this here is being represented here, and it's just sitting over this image. I want this to be bigger, so I'm going to go like this with using S to scale. So if I have my mouse hovering over here and I press S, well, it's going to scale the object. But if I have my mouse hovering over here, it's going to scale its UVs, right? So I just scaled its UVs to make it a little bit more realistic. Okay, see that? Remember before it was like that. So Control Shift Z, I'm going to go back. Oops. Okay, I can't. So I'm just going to select that over here. Make sure you press A to select all of it and scale it right up. And I'm happy with that. Okay. Now, one more thing I want to do is I want to show you how I get these really cool cuts in the blades and things. So let's add a modifier, generate Boolean, and this is one of the coolest modifiers I think that exist in Blender. Right, we're going to Shift A, making sure we're in object mode. We're going to add a cylinder. Let's just add a cylinder. We're going to rotate this using R on the Y axis, 90 degrees, and then we're going to scale it right down. We're going to grab it on the Z axis. We're going to press S to scale. We're going to grab it on the Z axis. We're going to press S to scale. But this time, when we scale, I don't want to scale too small. So I'm going to press X, Shift X to make sure that it's not scaling on the X axis. I just want to make a hole in this blade. See what I mean? So I'm going to grab this down, GZ. And now, here's your blade. Here's the blade that we made. We're going to click this little icon here. And we're going to click this, see how it goes, sword hilt, blade, cylinder, and click cylinder, right? And now if I come down to cylinder and I press this little view button, we've got a hole through the sword. And so you can use this in a variety of ways, right? So for example, if I let's just duplicate this. Wait, let's turn it back on. Let's duplicate it. Let's bring it up, let's grab it on the Y axis, and let's scale it a bunch. Grab it on there, let's just put it up there. So let's just say, so I'm going to apply this, right? And I'm going to click this one, and I'm going to get rid of it using X. So I've made that hole in the blade, okay? Now, in the same way, I can create a cut on the side of the blade, right? So hide cylinder, and I've created a cut. So you can use this in a variety of ways. So let's apply that, and why not? Even though this seems flimsy as ever, let's use that mirror modifier again. And this time, there we go. Let's take off X. Okay, something's going on there. I think it's because of its placement. So I'm not going to use the mirror modifier. But you get the idea. You can use the Boolean to cut your way through various situations. Now I don't like the top of this, so I'm just going to tab back into object mode. I'm going to press S, I'm going to press 0, and then they're all going to come together on the 0, right? Now we got a really sharp tip and a jagged edge. Okay, so let's go into baking these babies, alright? The last video I did was like an hour and 10 minutes, so let's keep going, let's keep going, let's keep going. So, this has a UV map. You can see all the UV maps here. If I tab into edit, this is how the UV map in the most layman's terms is taking an image and it's putting it onto your blade. And now that's good with a bunch of stuff, but when you want to get really into it, you really need to know this part of it. And so this is where Simple Bake really comes in. And Simple Bake is a paid add-on. You can get around it, but again, if you're going to mess around with the stuff, I'd recommend paying 20, 30, whatever it is for this. It's the most powerful tool. Okay, so let's go through, assuming you have Simple Bake. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create, and thanks to VoxVN for helping me out with all this information. It really took a while for me to get my head wrapped around this. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete this first one because it means nothing, I can tell already. So I'm going to press this plus to create a new UV map. I'm going to call it Simple Bake, making sure that the S and the B, Simple Bake, are in capital letters, right? And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to press A, U for unwrap, Smart UV Project. I'm going to turn the island margin up 1, and I'm going to go like that, okay? Now I'm going to do that on all 4 of these, but first I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the same thing with each of them, right? So I want to make sure that each of these have a UV map called Simple bake, because remember that each of these are actually their own objects, right? And what if you go into Nifty documents, into the creator docs, you know that in general you should only have 2, preferably less, material slots, and right now we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Even though that this is the same material as that, they're essentially 4 material slots, and so we want to get them all into one. So we are going to bake these image textures all into one. Alright, so now that we've gone over, we can check through. Whenever we click on each of these, each one of them has this new UV map called Simple Bake. We're going to press Tab to be in object mode. Make sure you're in object mode. Press A for all. Right, so all of them are selected. Press Tab to go into edit mode, and look at this mess over here. So we're going to press A while we're hovering over here. We're going to press U, Smart UV Project. Let's give them a bit of space, 0.02. Press OK, and look at that. The entire sword's UVs have just been sorted into this beautiful order. Okay, now let's use Simple Bake. Let's go over here. Now, Simple Bake is great. You want to make sure you're in PBR Bake because we are baking not lights. So Cycles Bake is for baking lights to your subject. PBR Bake is just for baking all of the other layers, right? Without lights included. So let's go settings. We're going to check in settings. I've already got one called Simple Bake 2K, but we're not going to look at that. We're going to get rid of settings. I'm going to show you how I set this up for baking a sword. So we click Bake Objects. We're going to add all 4 of these objects. So if I go tab back here into object mode and I go add, you can see that it's got the nifty sword, the blade, the sword hilt, the handle, and the pommel. Oh, it shouldn't have the nifty sword, so let's remove that. Okay, so we're just doing these 4: blade, sword hilt, handle, pommel, and that's why naming is so important, right? So they're all the objects we're going to bake. PBR bakes. We're going to bake the diffuse, which is the color, the metal, which is giving you that nice shine, the roughness, which gives you the kind of the texture that it's got going on here, and the normals, which are kind of another version of texture, and I still don't have my head wrapped completely around that, but it's the way these 3 are kind of how they reflect light. I still don't understand it, to be honest. So we got those 4 ticked. We're going to minimize that. Special bakes, we don't need this, but ambient inclusion is what you use for light, different types of light that I'm still not schooled on. Texture settings, now this is where you choose what texture your things are being baked at. In Nifty, you go and check the Nifty Creator docs because they tell you which what settings you should be using your asset, like should be producing and providing your assets in. But we're going to go for 2K because come on, it's a dope sword, right? We're going to go now. This is important. This is really important. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 objects, and we have a different material on each object. So we need to click this one here, multiple objects to one texture set, right? And it's going to be called merged bake. Right, so that's good. I'm going to click export settings. Nothing needs to be done there. UV settings. Now before, remember when we came over here and we made this simple bake thing? Well, this is what this is pertaining to. So down here, we've got this option called prefer existing UV maps called simple bake. So we untick auto detect. We tick prefer existing UV maps called simple bake, right? That way it's picking up this map that we made, which you can see right here. We made this map. Oh, I can see what we've done wrong. Let's get rid of this sword. Let's just go back a bit. Let's grab all these. Grab tab into edit mode, and we're going to go through the whole process again. Smart UV project, and we're going to do that. There we go. Before, what I'd done is I had accidentally unwrapped the nifty sword into the UV project. We don't want that. Okay. Anyway, so same deal. We've already made, what I was trying to say is we've made this simple bake UV map, and all of these textures exist on there. So we're going to come over here. We've sorted all these things out. We go other settings, and let's go copy objects and apply bakes. That way, if you fuck up, you can always go back to your object, right? And I think that's it. You can go into channel packing. There's nothing you need to know in there. CPU, GPU. Honestly, I'll just use my CPU, but you could just, I could be using my GPU. I mean, it's pretty strong. Anyway, you can't, so if you're in edit mode and you click bake, it says bake aborted. Check pop up for errors. Bake. Oh, not in object mode. So we, using tab, go to object mode, press bake. And look on the left there. It's just baked the blade. And now it's baking the handle. Watch. There we go. There's baking the leather in there. Right? You can see what it's doing now, huh? Great. There you go. So now what it's done, what this has done just then with Simple Bake, it has taken all of these little things that we made, which are now hidden because we chose that copy objects and apply bakes. It's taken all of these and it's baked these into these final objects, and all of these objects share the same material because we've made a new image, right? I'll show you the image now. Where is it? No, that's not it. That is not it. Wow, where did all this stuff come from? It's because... Okay, this is because I had a bunch of other stuff open before, so sorry if this is going to be really confusing. Okay. There it is. Merged bake, metalness, normal, and diffuse. There it is. So this is the new image that we just created, whereas before there was four images, okay? So now that there is one single image, we can safely select them all, right click, and join. And now we know that those four objects all share one single image, and this image is being wrapped upon that object, and now we have saved so much space. Remember, this is a low poly game, okay? And that's great. So what we want to do now is we're going to save this. We're going to save as not Bloom Sword. That is definitely not. That's an epic thing that I'm making. Let's call this common broken blade. I'm going to call it broken because it's got that. Nah, let's not call it that. It's going to be a bit more epic, right? Common cut blade. We'll give it another name later. Dot blend. Right? So we save this somewhere we know we want to keep it later. Now that we've saved that as a blend file, let's get rid of everything except for it. Okay? Now all we have is the single sword. If I press N, I can see the dimensions, right? I can see that's 1.6 meters tall. It's a bit tall, so I'm going to just reduce it using S. Maybe 1.45. Let's go there. That's great. Control A for apply all transforms, and we have this new thing. Now, see how there's this little dot in the middle? I'm going to show you really quickly. Okay, I'm going to try and really bust through this now. Let's import FBX, downloads sword, grab, let's put it to the side. Now if I touch this one, if I see this little orange dot, that is where your character will be holding the sword or whatever weapon you upload. So that is the origin point, right? And so let's get rid of that. We want the origin point of this blade to be in the hilt, in the handle. It needs to be in there somewhere, but it's down here. So how do we do this? So let's, what we can do is we can go object set origin to geometry, putting the origin point right in the middle, but that doesn't help, right? So how do we get it there? How do we move it around? What you can do is, if I press this, wait, why is this always confusing me these days? I swear something has changed. Something has changed here. Okay, we won't do it this way. Something has changed in my. I need to figure that out. Let's not do that now. What we're going to do instead is we're going to go Shift S, cursor to world origin, and that places the cursor to the world origin, which is this perfect little spot, this little red and white line. We're going to grab this, grabbing the sword with G, and we're going to use Z to drag it downwards. We'll press 3 so we can see right on the front, and we can see it's a little bit off from that cursor. So let's G along the Y, G along the Z, and there we go. It's pretty much in the middle. Let's go from over. Let's look at the top. No, it's not. So G on the X, and now we know that this is right in the middle. Okay, and now we're going to do this very important step. Object set origin to 3D cursor, and then it pops that origin of this piece right to the middle, right to where that 3D cursor is that we set before. Now we know, even though, so I could move this anywhere, it doesn't matter. See how that little orange dot's in the middle? That's what we want. So that is where the character will be holding the sword. Okay, cool. Awesome. Now there's one more thing, and I might share this the link here. This is another beautiful tool that VoxVN shared with me. It is a tool called GLB Texture Tools, and it is a free tool that you can use, and basically it's going to help you a bunch in saving images and resizing images. Remember before how we created that that one image that everything kind of sits on now? So GLB Texture Tools is going to help us use that image. Let's just get in here. It's going to help us use and save that image to the best we can. So I'm going to press N. Just really quickly, if you download a tool from online, the way to install it is you download a zip file, you go to Edit, Preferences, you come up here to the add-ons, you go Install, and then you find the thing that you've got. So for example, here's that Blender Kit thing that I was talking about earlier, where I got all those textures from, and you go Install Add-on, and then when it comes up here, you'll be prompted to tick a box, and you just tick that box. So for example, GLB, see how I have GLB Texture Tools ticked. And so GLB Texture Tools is what we're going to look at now. So if I press N for this big option bay and I scroll down, there's this little GLB Texture Tools, and if I click on the object, it's going to show me all of these images here that are part of this blend file, and I can choose what size I'm going to save them as. So let's remember we did it at 2K, so let's go for 2K. You could make them smaller if you wanted it smaller. I wouldn't recommend going bigger. You go big to small, not small to big. It'll just mess up your textures. So you go 2K, texture settings, operate on all textures and list, scale image. And did you see it just went from file not saved to it's showing you the size? So now we can get a really good rough estimate of how much space this item takes. Now we know that this image has been saved, right? So we're really close. We're almost there. So I'm going to press N to get out of that. We're already in shading, this tab up here. We've been building in the modeling tab. We're in shading. Down here in the shader editor, which is a drop down box, you can scroll out and you find this, and this is, let's just say that it is this here is the way each of these are those 4 images we just saved, and these are being fed into your final the mixer or the shader, and then those are going onto the material output, which put them on here. So one thing people have a problem with is when they go and put things in Nifty, they're dark. Look how dark that is, right? So once we've baked the images, we can come through here, we can click on emission. I like 0.3, and we're going to take the diffuse, which is the color of the object. We're going to plug it into the color here, and now we start to get some glow. So let's turn this up a little bit. There we go. Let's just go there. Actually, we're going to go 0.4. Right. So now we know we've saved the image. We've chosen the. We've kind of turned it all into one thing. We've solidified things. We've done pretty good at things. All right. So now I could save this as a separate file. I'm not gonna do that right now. Instead, I'm just gonna file export GLB common cut blade. Let's put this on the desktop so I know where we are. Export GLB. Now let's go over to something that website that I really like called 3D Viewer. And this is a beautiful thing because it's going to show you if you got it close to right. So we're going to drag this, we're going to put it on there, and lo and behold, we have a blade. And you can see now it's got a bit of reflection on it because it's got this real world lighting, right? I feel like I made it a little bit too bright, but for now I think that's good. So I could safely assume, or we could all safely assume, that this blade would be ready to put into Blender. You might need to mess around with the size a little bit. You might hold it with one of your avatars and it's too large. You just go back to the GLB file, you click the object, press S, scale it to the size you want, Control A to apply, and you go all transforms. And you can do that, you can do that as much as you want until you get it correct. But that is the gist of it, guys. And yeah, I really hope you got something from this. I wonder how long this took. 45 minutes? 47, which is a lot better. I think the last one I rambled on for an extra half an hour. So there you go. We've created a blade. We can easily put that into Nifty now. Yeah, if you like what I do, just check in with me. And if you got any questions, come and hang out, man. We do raids. It's us and the crew, MCV Island Raiders, Marscat Voyage. Let's go for a mission together. Let's pump some things out. We got really good material. We got amazing NFT giveaways constantly, like all the time. Come stack some cream with us. Come raiding with us. Let's go conquer the Nifty Seas. Let's make some epic items together. Let's do this thing together. Right? Am I right? Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, as I said before, if you have any questions, just hit me up. Yoza!